Uh-oh. X.
There you are.
This is the Faribault State School and Hospital, Faribault, Minnesota. Some 1,800 mildly to profoundly retarded people live here. For many of them, it is the only home they will ever know. Dakota Building, since its construction in 1913, has been the residence for the most profoundly retarded men, those most disturbed, and with the least ability to care for themselves. Residents are placed in Dakota Building only after failing to adjust in other buildings, usually because of destructive, assaultive behavior or because they cannot feed, dress, and toilet themselves. One day is like another here. The patients do not improve.
Before you could walk out into the ward, 50% of the patients were in various stages of undress.
Many years ago, Dakota was considered a punishment building. Men from other areas that would run away, abuse another patient, abuse a technician, were put in Dakota as a punishment. And many of them were returned back to their other buildings. Some were left there. That's how Dakota really started. I mean, this is the type of patient that we ended up with. Most of the men in Dakota have been in the institution 19 years. The IQ is 20, or many of them are untestable. We don't know the true IQ.
The residents have been taken out of the locked ward and placed in a new program which uses a direct and effective technique called behavior modification. In behavior modification, residents and a teacher work together in a small room. The goal is to train the resident to feed, dress, and to take care of himself to the limit of his ability.
I got to the point where I could sit him on the at the table, if nothing else, for 15 seconds, and I would reward them with an M&M or a piece of candy. So this way, eventually, and it took 3 to 4 weeks, they learned that if they sat at the table, they'd get the reinforcer.
At first, the slightest effort toward the goal is rewarded, but then by successive approximations, the patient must accomplish more and more of the task himself before receiving a treat.
That's a boy. Good for you.
For Ronald, tying his own shoes will be the end of a long and laborious training process in which each step is rewarded.
Ronald can go through all of these beads. He's the one that we had the trouble with at first. It took 2 months before he'd pick up a toy. But being a quadriplegia, it took longer. I started him out by just picking up something. The first thing he took was a teddy bear. From that, we gradually worked to other toys. Then we gradually worked, I got him to string the beads. I kept reinforcing him as he would pick up each one before. Now we can go through the whole thing before I have to reinforce him. And then he gets the Hershey bar. He is on the shoe now, starting with that. So far, it isn't going bad, I don't think. For what we started with, nothing.
I think, yes, I think if we had, if for some reason we had to drop the activity center program, I think we'd see much of this negative behavior returning. That it really does pay to have programming, because it does, in the long run, cut down the amount of time that they have to spend treating patients for wounds or cleaning up after their messes.
Early in the program, the tasks are designed to give the patient skill in manipulating objects. A first step toward learning to lace and tie shoes, button buttons, or zip zippers.
Push it down. Now just hold it there. Can you push two of them at the same time? Good. Good.
There were a number of destructive things going on. Residents used to shove chairs back and forth against other residents, and pretty soon somebody would get injured.
What's the song, Jimmy? What's that song?
Well, that's one of the pluses with this. We've been told for a long time that we have a very severe moral problem here. And I think it's really improved. I think the technicians will say that too. And it's because things do get better.
Mr. Selwyn, what's this?
Ball.
A ball.
Shoe.
That's a shoe.
Truck.
Truck. Car. Tractor. That's right.
You've come a long way with this guy, haven't you?
Yeah, I'm very proud of this. He used to never say a word.
Really?
He'd just sit on the ward. And you could walk right in front of him, and he'd never look up at you.
Yeah.
But now, he talks, he tries to get around and get the other kids in conversation, and it's wonderful. I hope to get him saying sentences, but this is going to take several months.
How long have you been at it?
About a month and a half with him. But
For 20 years before that, he never said anything.
never said a word. Yeah, this boy never said a word. He'd never say a word. He'd get up in the morning and dress, sit on the couch, and this is all he did.
If this type of programming had been done with these men when they were young boys, there never would have been a Dakota building.
But by working with them on the ward, you would never dream that these kids had the ability hidden that they have down here in the classroom. I just was amazed.
Wanna run away, wanna run away, wanna run away, wanna run away, wanna run away.
We've got a lot of folks here who don't need to be here. And the institutions themselves have taught them some very bad habits about living in groups. And Suppose one of the things we're doing now is going about aiding the resident in unlearning some of these bad kinds of things that we've taught him before. I think that's one of the choices that the state of Minnesota makes if it's going to create large institutions and make them warehouses for people, and you get folks who learn that kind of behavior.
Behavior modification works. Profoundly retarded patients can be taught self-care, and they can rejoin the human family.